Roosevelt and Churchill and Stalin decide to meet in Tehran, Iran, and they agree to the next phase of the war. They've said, all right, we've stopped the Germans and the Italians from expanding, and we're beginning to push them back, right? We've had Stalingrad in Europe that has stopped the German advance, turning point in Europe, and now we're pushing them back. We've had North Africa, the Germans have been pushed out of North Africa. Half of Italy, the Germans have been pushed out. Our bombing campaign has destroyed their railroads, their aircraft factories. It's given us control of the air. Now is the time to invade France. Now is the time for a full-scale invasion of France. When that happens, when we finally conquer Germany, what we're going to do is we're going to divide it up. Each of the Allied countries will take a part of Germany, and we'll make sure that it can't ever rise up again. The Soviet Union, in exchange for our help in Europe, is going to invade Japan to help us defeat that enemy. And we'll create a new international peacekeeping organization after the war. You know what this is called. It's called the United Nations, the UN. And do me a favor, write down UN on your paper, a little slip of paper, and hand that to me tomorrow, all right? And don't tell anybody. Don't tell any of those slackers. You know what I'm saying? All right. So make sure you put your name on it. So the idea here is to develop this plan to invade France. This is actually what the plan looks like. This is a map. It's crazy detailed. You don't have to know anything on the map, really. But what I want to show you is just how involved the planning is for this invasion. Its code name is Operation Overlord. It's like the favorite thing that Mrs. Davenport can ever say in U.S. history. And she likes to say it kind of like that. How do you say it, Mrs. Davenport?
Operation Overlord.
Told you she loves it. So the idea here is that we're going to assemble our force in England, and you can see our little force gathering here in England, right? And then we're all going to go on the ships, and we're going to send the planes in, and paratroopers will parachute in behind enemy lines, and then we'll land here on the beach, and psh, all will go well. So this tiny little section right here, this is called Normandy. This is the little tiny section of France called Normandy that we will invade. And there are a bunch of different beaches there. You can see them. They're called Utah, Sword, Gold, and Juno. And they all go really, really, really well, those beaches, the invasion on those beaches. Unfortunately, the invasion at Omaha Beach, that doesn't go so well. The invasion at Omaha Beach is a disaster. In fact, it's only a quarter-mile long, a teeny-tiny little section of beach, but that is so brutal that a couple thousand Americans are going to be killed on just this little tiny stretch of beach, 4-mile stretch of beach, not quarter-mile, sorry, 4-mile stretch of beach. In fact, it's so bad that as the battle is going on, we are about to make the call for a full retreat as a failed invasion of Europe when we finally get word that we have successfully taken Omaha Beach. It was that close to being a failed invasion where we weren't going to be able to invade Europe. So with this invasion going on in Europe, what we're going to see then is us taking the fight to the Germans in Europe now, in Western Europe. So the Soviets are over in Eastern Europe. If you looked at this map, the Soviets are advancing to the east, which would be over here. This is where the Soviets are going to be advancing from. And now we are in the west, and we're going to be advancing on Germany from the west. So it's kind of like a gigantic sandwich. And imagine a peanut butter or jelly sandwich where the Soviets are this piece of bread and we are this piece of bread, and we're just smushing the peanut butter and jelly together, and all that peanut butter and jelly that falls out, that's the dead Germans. That's the idea, okay? So the fighting is particularly fierce in France. There's a series of entrapments and enclosures there called hedgerows. It makes it really hard. It turns the whole of France into basically one gigantic trap. The Germans counterattack American forces for the last time in France in a battle called the Battle of the Bulge. They wanted to really cut off our supplies with a surprise attack and force us to retreat. It almost works. We're nearly defeated. It's 3 weeks of incredible fighting. A general named General Patton counterattacks. America wins, and that's the last big offensive by the Germans in the West during World War II. And really, by this point, what we're going to see here is that the German army is just no longer able to keep pace with the Allied armies, whether it's the Soviets or the Americans or the British. That they just couldn't move their supplies, their troops as quickly as we could. And here's a quote that shows that. While the German army depended on animal transport, they literally were using donkeys and horses and mules to move their men and equipment. The United States, profiting from mass production of its automotive industry, had mobility that completely outclassed the enemy. In other words, we could move further, faster, we were more flexible than our enemy. This process will continue all the way up, and that the pieces of the sandwich bread will continue to be smushing, and the city of Berlin is going to be right in the center, right? The capital of Germany is going to be a race to Berlin. Who will get there first, the Soviets or the Americans? The Soviets do make it there first. They will take Berlin by May 7th, 1945, so really almost a year after we invade in Normandy. And then Adolf Hitler is going to be gone when he commits suicide on April 30th, when Berlin is first invaded. So when Berlin falls, the war in Europe will end. It's called VE Day, Victory in Europe. VE, right? Victory in Europe over Germany. And that part of the war will finish. That leaves us with one final part of the war, though. There is one last part of the war, right, that we still have to finish. Do you know what it is?